there is breaking news out of the White House. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, just had a meeting with President Donald Trump. And President Trump and Netanyahu came out and gave a press conference in which President Trump announced that we have a new hostage deal that everybody has agreed to except Hamas. We're going to talk about what that means and what it doesn't mean. Here's the 21 points that President Trump laid out. And it sounds pretty good. It's hopeful, okay? Number one, Gaza will be a terror-free zone and pose no threat to its neighbors. This comes from the written version of this plan that President Trump's office put out. And so I'm just paraphrasing it for you to make it as simple as possible. Redevelopment of Gaza for the benefit of its people, immediate end to the war as long as both sides agree, and an Israeli withdrawal in stages, and I'll explain that a little more later. The hostages, all of them, including the dead ones and the 20 living hostages, will be released within 72 hours of Israel accepting the agreement. And that just happened. So the clock is already ticking according to this plan. So if Hamas were to agree, then we might actually see the hostages out in the next 72 hours. Israel agrees to a prisoner exchange. They will release 250 prisoners that are serving life sentences for murder and other terror acts, along with 1,700 detainees, including some women and children that have been held in Gaza. And for every set of remains of an Israeli hostage, so every dead Israeli hostage that is returned, Israel will release 15 deceased Gazans' remains. Apparently, Israel has started hanging on to those things. They didn't at the beginning of the war, but now they realize, oh, wait, this is a bargaining chip, so they're keeping them. The plan calls for amnesty for Hamas members who will disarm and commit to peaceful coexistence. Now, I mean, come on. I mean, it'd be great, but not likely. In addition to that, Israel will pledge safe passage all those who have somewhere else to go besides Gaza and want to leave. Now, they can't just leave first and then figure out where to go. They already have to have that nailed down before they are allowed to leave Gaza, but they can leave Gaza if they want to. An immediate increase in humanitarian aid into Gaza, water, electricity, medical supplies, rubble removal, infrastructure, things like that. This is all written in the document. And UN-led aid distribution with Red Cross, Red Crescent, and other neutral institutions. And the Rafah crossing opened into Egypt. I'm not even sure that Egypt would be okay with that, but apparently they've agreed, everybody's agreed except Hamas. Now, as far as governance is concerned, they would agree to a temporary technocratic governance for Gaza by a Palestinian committee that is supervised by an international board of peace, chaired by none other than President Donald Trump. Oh, and Tony Blair, to name a few. President Trump went on to say, it's important, got to do it. I'll chair the board of peace, and we'll bring peace to a place that's never had peace in living memory or for thousands of years. Okay, this then would also include a Trump-led economic plan to rebuild Gaza that would involve experts who build Middle Eastern miracle cities like Neom over in Saudi Arabia. Neom, if you don't know, is the Saudi Arabian mega project. They were going to create a linear city. Neom is supposed to hold 9 million people, is only 150 meters wide, the whole city for 9 million people. But it's 50 stories tall or something and 150 kilometers long. No cars in this city in the desert. It'll have one train that'll go back and forth. If you need to get anywhere, you'll have to get on that train. But you won't need to get anywhere because you're going to be able to get everything you need within a 15-minute walk. They're going to get people like that to come up with a plan to rebuild Gaza. And as I have said many times before, you can guess who's going to pay for all of this. Yeah, us. There you go. You got it, us. You could read that, the US, because you can bet the Palestinians are not going to pay for it. The Israelis might even end up paying for some of it. But anyway, on to the rest of the 21-point plan. they are going to establish Gaza as a special economic zone with favorable trade terms with neighboring countries. So here in Panama, there's a special economic zone that's on one end of the Panama Canal, is closed to the public for the most part. It is a place where products that are brought from around the world and are going through the Panama Canal can be purchased duty-free. If they create a special economic zone in Gaza, you can bet that it's not going to be all that special. And it'll probably be absolute just hive of corruption. The next point in the 21-point plan is freedom of movement. So no forced departures. They can leave if they want to leave as long as they have someplace to go. And they're not going to be made to leave if they don't want to leave. Okay? So on top of that, they will all agree to demilitarize Gaza, destroy all the tunnels, all the weapons factories, and there will be a supervised disarmament of the Palestinian people, and then a reintegration program for the militants who fought for Hamas. Demilitarizing Gaza, great. Destruction of tunnels, great. Supervised disarmament. Now, regional partners, that would be Qatar and Egypt, will guarantee compliance and ensure that Hamas and others don't break the deal. Then there will be an international stabilization force that will be deployed, and it'll be supported by Arab and international partners to train Palestinian police and secure Gaza's borders. Now, even though Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to this, what he agreed to didn't sound like what is actually in this document, okay? Because what Netanyahu said was it's going to look a little more like what I'm about to show you here. So the blue line, the short blue line, is the area of Gaza where roughly IDF troops are right now at this moment, okay? In the first stage of this, once the hostages are released, the IDF will pull back to the yellow line. And so as they pull back to the yellow line, then, and more of the facets of this plan are completed, then they will eventually pull back to the red line. And then finally, the IDF will pull back to the kind of hashed line there and maintain that buffer zone around Gaza, very small buffer zone compared to what Israel had in mind. Now, after the statement was made, when the reporters in the room were allowed to ask questions, one of them asked Prime Minister Netanyahu, does this mean that you're giving up on the objectives of the fight that you have been holding to since October 8th, 2023? And Netanyahu said, no, this represents a completion of those objectives. The objectives, as I remember them from October 7th, as soon as Netanyahu came out, was we will destroy Hamas, we will remove Hamas from power, and we will regain all of our hostages. So if this peace plan goes through as written, they will get back all their hostages. Hamas will be disarmed but not destroyed. So disarm Hamas is going to have to suffice for destroy Hamas and ensure that Gaza will never be a threat to Israel again. An international stabilization force would still have to be created, and you'd have to get countries to agree to send their troops to be a part of that. Now, thus far, all the countries that have been approached by that idea have said, no, we don't want our people over there. So I'm not sure who they would get to man this stabilization force. It just says Arab and international partners. Whoever decided to take part in this stabilization force would have to be paid to do so, and you can bet that money would be coming from the United States, almost certainly. And they're going to be training Palestinians as police. It says, and secure Gaza's borders. You're going to train Palestinians to secure Gaza's borders? I don't think Israel would like that a whole lot. This statement goes on to say Israel will not annex Gaza. The IDF will withdraw as the international security force establishes security with only a small perimeter around Gaza until Gaza is fully secure. That's what it says. So Israel's been saying for some time that they're going to take and hold and keep a buffer zone inside Gaza. And now that's in this draft of this plan that is going away. they will only hold the perimeter until Gaza is, quote unquote, fully secure. I guess they could probably say, yeah, it's never going to be fully secure, so we'll just be there forever. That's fine. This is as reported in Israel Real Time. A senior Hamas official told Reuters, we just received the Trump plan officially from Egypt. And Hamas is pointing out, look, we weren't part of these negotiations. Egypt goes over and asks what they think, and then they go back and ask Israel what they think, and they go back and forth. This was just President Trump saying, the war's going to end. That's it. I'm declaring it. We got a ceasefire. And Joe Biden tried that, tried to spring it on Israel. Israel wasn't too happy with Joe Biden about doing that. This plan is eminently better than the plan that Joe Biden came up with and just arbitrarily, unilaterally announced. Still not, Hamas has not agreed to it. The Prime Minister of Qatar just met with Egyptian representatives and received the proposal. A senior Hamas official called this plan a vague plan that promises nothing at all. The leader of the Hamas movement, Mahmoud, said, what happened is an attempt to suppress the international momentum and recognition of the Palestinian state. All they're trying to do is suppress recognition of a Palestinian state here. An advisor to the head of the political bureau of Hamas said to the Arab television station, the resistance weapon is linked to the establishment of a Palestinian state. Now, he goes on to say the release of Israeli prisoners is linked to the end of the war and the withdrawal of the occupation from Gaza. So again, he's reiterating what they have said all along. Hamas has said, we won't give up those hostages until Israel agrees to end the war for good, 100%, and pull out of Gaza without any conditions. The Houthis said Trump's plan is unfeasible and aims to complicate Hamas's situation and place the blame on them. Trump's plan is intended to stop the world's anger against Israel and to eliminate international solidarity with Palestine. So what they're saying is we need this war to continue because right now we're winning. We're winning in the court of public opinion, and we don't want the war to stop. That is where they are. That's not just the Houthis, that's Hamas as well. So on the other side, Israeli politicians are responding to it. The opposition party leaders say they accept and support the plan. Once the deal was announced, the shekel jumped by about 1.7%. So the Israeli currency got a lot stronger because if this goes through, it would be a great boon for their economy. This is the real cherry on top for me. President Trump says, if Hamas does not accept this deal, then we will stand behind Israel and let them do what they need to do to finish the job, which is pretty much exactly what President Trump has been saying since day one. What makes me wonder and think maybe Hamas might actually agree to this proposal is that there's something going on in Qatar. This is not in writing. It's quietly being reported in a couple places, but I haven't been able to corroborate it yet. And that is that Trump said that Qatar had to agree that if Hamas did not sign this deal, that Qatar would deport all the Hamas leadership that was not wiped out in Israel's strike on Qatar a couple weeks ago. I can't corroborate whether or not Qatar actually agreed to that, but if Qatar did agree to that, then where's Hamas going to go? They'll just go to Turkey, our NATO ally, that has the 8th largest military in the world, made up of U.S. weapons. Anyway, then the document talks about an interfaith dialogue to promote tolerance and peaceful coexistence. Then the next point is a little sticky, and it's a pathway to Palestinian statehood. And it does say that there is only a pathway to Palestinian statehood if the reforms that are called for succeed, and conditions could allow Palestinian self-determination and eventual statehood. So it's not saying it's a sure thing, it's just leaving the door open. It's still on the table someday, somewhere, in some point, not in this administration. Then the U.S. would help to mediate and facilitate dialogue between the Palestinians and the Israelis, looking for a political solution. And then it promotes a long-term vision of a peaceful, prosperous Gaza. So there is the 21-point plan. So far, what we're hearing from Hamas is not promising in terms of whether or not they will agree. But if they do, we could see hostages being released in very short order. Now, there's another reason why I think this is probably not going to work, and that's because I'm not convinced that Hamas knows where all of the hostages are. So returning all the hostages might not actually be possible. There's been a lot of chaos, a lot of movement, a lot of things blowing up and falling down in Gaza over the last couple of years. The last time we got close to a hostage release, Hamas said, hey, wait, we need some time here because we can't find all the hostages. Some of the hostages are being held by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and some of them are being held by civilians in Gaza. And so Israel probably knows where some of them are. Hamas probably knows where more of them are, but I don't know if anybody knows where all of them are. And that might present a bit of a problem. So my take on this peace plan put forth by Donald Trump is, number one, it's a good plan. It's probably the best plan that we have seen so far in this war. Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed and said, this is the plan for the day after the war. That said, despite all of the rosy rhetoric that is coming out of the White House right now about, this is it, job done, we came up with the end, everybody's agreed to it, except Hamas. If Hamas doesn't agree to it, you can come up with all the plans in the world. That's not going to do one bit of difference. The war can end immediately if Hamas agrees to end it. Point, period, end of story. That's it.